Well, Morgan, what a joy to welcome you to Win today. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Really,
thank
thank you.
you. Thank you. I tell you what, as we begin a brand new year here, Morgan, one of the questions I just love to ask you as we start is like, what do you think is the most difficult emotion people are feeling these days? Maybe most people, or even people you
Mm,
work with.
yeah, that's such a good question. And just in my talking with people, just in my community and even family and friends, it's
Mm-hmm.
just trying to hold space for both the hope and possibility of what could be, but also like the reality of what could be that might be, oh, this uncertainty as to everything we've been going on dealing with over the past few years. How long is this going to continue? So yeah, I think a lot of it's just a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of wow, I feel joy and sorrow, or I'm feeling nostalgic, but I'm also feeling hopeful. I'm feeling discouraged, but at the same time, I'm kind of happy to have a clean slate, just like a lot of okay, I'm feeling a lot of things at once. And that seems to be kind of the normal, if you will, is to feel a lot of things at once. So yeah.
Can you drill down on that? I'm just really curious, even in your day to day, like how do you mechanically hold space for hope and uncertainty, for joy, for
Mhm.
sorrow, for beauty, for brokenness? And yeah, I'm just really curious about that. How does that work for you?
Yeah, for me, it has been really just taking it 1 hour at a time,
Ah,
1 minute at a time. Like even the day that we're having this conversation, I had a kind of like a health doctor's related appointment that I just couldn't do, and I just had to cancel it.
mhm,
And my first thought was, oh no, is that how the rest of the day is going to go? Am I going to have to just cancel everything?
mm,
And I had a moment where I was like, no, actually, just this moment, I can't do it
mm,
because yesterday was a really long day and I'm really tired. And I may feel a little bit better after my coffee, after I've
mhm,
stretched, a few hours later. And that's really hard for me because I like to think, okay, this is the kind of day it's going to be.
mhm,
Here's what I have planned, whether I'm resting or whether I'm working. But I feel like there's been a lot of like, okay, the first part of the day, I was super productive. But by the time lunch came, I was just like, sorry, everyone, I just got to take it easy. I need a break. Some nights I go to sleep very easily. I hit the pillow and I'm out. And then some nights I stay up thinking about every possibility of what tomorrow could bring. And for me, that is kind of stressful in a way, like my natural go to is I would like to have sort of like a rhythm and a flow, but I've had to learn how to recognize that that rhythm and that flow that I'm seeking, it comes breath by breath, not day by
mm.
day, not year by year. That's what I want so bad. But that's not how it works. And if I allow myself to slow down and to say, breath by breath. Like literally, you just made it through breath by breath into 1 minute into the next. Wow, look at you. That's an accomplishment. So yeah, lots of redefining what it means to, be human and be all these roles that I am. I'm a parent, I'm a spouse, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm all these things. And just redefining like, okay, yeah, it's okay to take this hour by hour.
A couple questions sort of emanate out of this. I'm just curious, in a generalized way, do you think a lot of us just move so quickly in our heart space, in our head space, that we don't slow down to even recognize these shifts in rhythm? I'll just take us right there because you wrote about rhythm in your book. I'm a musician, you're a musician, so we both understand
Yes.
rhythm. But what's interesting is I've been in this space of studying managing our own energy.
Hmm.
Like when am I at my best throughout the day? Maybe there's a
Hmm.
particular chunk of hours that I'm just at my best to do the work that matters the most. So the second question out of that, again, the first question is, do we just move too quickly through this? The second question as a follow-up to that then would be, do we need to redefine what creating a rhythm is? In other words,
Hmm.
me and my type A personality thinks a rhythm is the same every day. And if I miss the same every day, I'm not in my rhythm. But that's not it based upon
Yeah.
what I read in your book and what I just heard you say. You want to
Yeah.
elaborate?
Oh, oh my gosh. Okay, I could talk about this forever. I'm
Let's
so
do
glad
it.
that you
Go there.
brought
Let's do
this
it.
up. So, being a musician,
Mm-hmm.
and I've played, different instruments, but I think this applies for a lot of different musicians, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever been in any type of improving session or whatever.
Yeah, it's
It's
jazz.
so nice to be in the pocket. Like
That's
that,
it.
when you feel like you're in the pocket, you're like, we got our groove, we're just going, like I
Mm-hmm.
riff on this, you riff on that, rhythm guitars doing this, drums doing that, keys doing that, and we're just in the pocket. It just feels like
Yep.
everything in that moment just feels so right. But if you think about it, you can't just jump into the pocket. Like you have to, there's so much that leads to that. There's a whole introduction to the song. There's, okay, who's gonna start it? Who's gonna count us in? Like, how are we gonna build to this moment? And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get to the moment, you got to build back out of it too. So it's like the average song, say the average song is 3 to 4 minutes. There's
Mm-hmm.
all this movement that's happening just to have that sweet spot that we as musicians may enjoy playing. Like maybe it's that little outro of the bridge where it's just like, okay, yeah, we're just free here. But at some point, you got to get back to that chorus and you got to get back to your outro.
Yeah.
However, the song is structured, there are all these different moments of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And there will always be these moments that we feel just kind of we're more naturally able to work through and to be present in. But there are going to be some songs that are hard, some parts of that song that are just going to be harder, but they're still a part of the song. They're still a part of making the song whole. Like for me, it's always the intro. So I used to tour with my sister, and there was a song, and I was playing rhythm guitar for her. And most of the time, just the way her songs were structured, I was not the one starting the song. But for this particular song, I had my in-ears in,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on me to start this song. The amount of times I missed my cue, I hated that moment so much. I'm like, normally this is the drummer's responsibility or the keys or whoever, anybody but me. Like, I don't like this moment. And it just took me out because I was like, I got to think about really, really starting this song strong. And I feel like what that teaches me about life is like, yeah, sometimes I don't want to be the one who has to initiate a plan, or I don't want to be the one who has to problem solve right at the top of the day, or to answer the phone call that I wasn't expecting, or to deal with the diagnosis that I've received. I don't want to be the one to have to deal with that. But that's a part of the song. And it's a part of the song that's going to lead me into those other moments that I will be able to breathe more deeply and enjoy. So it's all a part of it.
I really love that. Just to stay in the realm of music for a moment, and folks listening, if you're not a musician or don't understand this, I'll make this clear here. So Morgan, there's another aspect of this that I was thinking about. As a musician, where we see a rest, it's not an absence of something. Like we anticipate the rests.
Mm,
And where we anticipate a rest in music, it makes the action more syncopated, more lively. So
mhm,
what would you want to say to people about anticipating the rest of
mhm,
life, the
mhm.
rest moments?
Oh, yes, that is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me, a long time I thought about rest and as sleep. I just equated those two things. I was like, oh yeah, rest. Yeah, we do that by sleeping. However, there's so many reasons why what we may associate as maybe our optimal rest, we may not be able to get there. Like we may not be able to get as many hours of sleep as we want. For me, I could probably do the whole day, 8 hours and a 2 hour nap. Like that's what I would like. But there's so many reasons. Maybe busy schedule, a toddler, a dog that has to be walked. There's so many different a health reason that you're not able to sleep as much as you want or rest in the optimal way. Maybe you feel like you're most rested when you're in the mountains or by the water, and you might be looking outside and it's cold and dreary and there's black ice on the road. You're like, this is not my optimal state of rest. But what I feel like you discover in music and is that, well, even, when you consider the whole song and everyone else is involved, you may not always get to rest the way that you want to, or create those moments the way you want, because you're playing with all these other people. There's so many other factors going on. So what you have to do is to look for other ways to rest and look for other ways to enter in that space and not see it as less than. And I feel like that's what
Wow.
I've had to learn is that
Wow.
I would prefer to have a quiet house to rest. But if I can't, those moments that I get to rest, they're not less than. They're still good. There's still beauty in them. I can still have gratitude for them. And then when those big moments of rest come, I'll have even more gratitude for that. So yeah, that's something that I am learning. Keyword learning.
For sure. I mean, let's take this from theory to practice and just rewind into the conversation. What you said, today you had a chunk where you thought, okay, I'm gonna get after it today. And
Yeah.
then later on, post canceling the doctor's appointment and all that, you thought, I don't know if I have the energy for that. Speak to your schedule, speak to today and what
Yeah.
you experienced about the doctor appointment through the lens of what you just shared. What did you learn about yourself, and what can people understand about, number one, listening, slowing down, having dialogue with ourselves? Do I have the space for this right now? How do I create space
Mm,
for this so that I can be at my best? What did you learn today?
yeah, that's such a good question. I learned that I'm a lot more flexible and open to adaptability than I oftentimes give myself credit for. I think that sometimes, because maybe it's because we have so much technology at our fingertips,
Mhm.
so many computers at our fingertips, that we start to treat ourselves like a computer that has a program that's like, okay, if something goes wrong in the code, everything falls apart.
Oh,
That's always been the case with computers. And we forget that we are so much more complex than computers. Like, we can handle, change a lot better than a computer can, which is, so I'm on a MacBook computer. If I try to just download a .exe file onto my computer, which is a file for Windows PC, my computer's going to freak out and say, nope, I'm not doing that today. I'm not doing that ever. That's not a part of my program. We don't run those kind of files over here.
yeah.
So I think sometimes we can take that same idea to our life of like, oh, no, this calendar in my phone, no, this is my day.
Hmm.
Is it though? Is it? Can be, there's this stuff can't get dragged around. Some of the stuff can't get deleted. I mean, even when I sent the message to my doctor, I felt terrible because I was like, oh, now I'm interrupting her whole day. Like, I was like, I canceled on her. I was like, she was sitting there waiting for me. And you know what the response that I got back was?
Tell me.
Feel better. Feel better. Because I had like this immense headache, and I was like, I can't do like the teledoc call that I just knew I couldn't do it in that moment.
Mhm.
And that's the message that I got. Not, oh my goodness, Morgan, you ruined my day. How dare you? We'll never reschedule ever again. It's like, this stuff is a lot more flexible, than we realize. And I think that's something that was something I was very conscious of this morning as I started to look at that first thing on that calendar. It's like, wait, this can be moved. This can be rescheduled.
Well, it's really fascinating at this point in the conversation is that I think there's one word that underpins a lot of our inner dialogue, and it's shame. Like, how does
Mm-hmm.
shame infect your inner dialogue to distort truth? Because here's the thing. If you would have believed along that thought process, like, what kind of person am I? I'm ruining this
Mm-hmm.
person's day. And we're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about not being considerate of others, but we're talking about the
Yeah.
insidious nature of shame
Mm-hmm.
infiltrating our belief system
Mm-hmm.
when, in fact, we're creating truths
Mm-hmm.
out of things that just aren't true. Like, how does that play into the conversation for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree with that. I think it has a lot to do with learning how to be aware of all the things that for whatever reason you've been made to feel like you should do.
Hmm.
You should go to college, or you should be married by now, or you should make more money in your career. Whatever those messages are, I think they come up more often than we may realize because it's not always vocal. It's like, I think at a certain point of maturity, you can get to a point where you recognize, like, okay, there's people in my life who I just have to have boundaries around because they just
Sure,
say
Morgan.
certain things
Yeah.
that make me feel a lot of shame, whoever that person is in your life. But I'm finding that even after creating those boundaries in my life, there's a lot of stuff that gets in the underbelly of that, in like a societal level of like,
Mhm.
you should be further along by now. Like, look at other people your age. I was literally just last night, I was watching a YouTube video of someone who's the exact same age as me, and is like in like a space program. And I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I was just like, look at all they've accomplished. Meanwhile, I was like, when they were doing, I literally said this to my husband. I was like,
Hmm.
when they were doing that, I was playing guitar trying to pay rent the next month. I literally said that because they said what age they were when they had started this
Wow.
program. And I was like, that video wasn't directed at me. Like, they didn't say, hey, Morgan, you're a failure, because none of that happened. But there was something in that of
Oh.
like, oh, this is what's important. And I think that those things, like, they get into our head a
Mhm.
lot, and they affect the way we're able to say, well, can I cancel this appointment? Or can I say to this friend, I'm sorry, I just can't get together today like I wanted to? They affect all of that. So I've just been, I don't have a perfect solution for it, but I have been trying to just be more aware of those moments where I'm feeling like, am I holding back because there's shame associated with saying no, with canceling something, with rescheduling something? So yeah, lots of questions, not always answers. But yeah, that's something I've been thinking a lot about.
No, and what I really love about what you said is, and this is a lesson for all of us, is taking every thought captive involves saying, am I unreliable as a person? And shining light upon that and going,
Mhm,
no, this is just a day that I'm having where I'm not feeling well.
mhm,
This doesn't give expression to the weight of my character, the depth of my character with life. So therefore, you
yeah,
can shine a light of truth upon it and go, okay, I can make this choice without allowing the seed of shame to infiltrate the rest of my day and ruin my day. And I mean,
yeah,
I think it's beautiful the way you answer that, because I think shutting the shoulds up
yeah,
is difficult, but
yeah.
so necessary for us. And I mean, this is already just the sign of a fun conversation because we're 20 minutes in and I've not even gotten to question two. And I love it.
That's,
I just love it
that
so
is okay
much.
with me. I love this conversation.
Mm.
So yeah, I even appreciate you for that, because it's such a present moment conversation for me. It's a daily thing that I'm having to work through, and not that I figured it all out, but I'm like, even just in me exhaling it and talking about it, I just hope that it can encourage someone else to be like,
Good.
oh, so it's cool to talk about these things. Like, it's cool to talk about how stressful it is to
Well, I
try
think
to keep up with.
if we don't, what's present? Secrecy and shame.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is so so true. So that's what I hope. And running my mouth, I just
I
hope that
love this.
other people can feel that permission as well to just say, yeah, I'm not gonna live under that pretense that I've gotta, like, I love how you said, shut up the shoulds. Like, that needs to be on a t-shirt. So
Shut the shoulds up.
yeah.
So good. Yeah. Well, I mean, really what this drills down to is the presence of peace.
Mhm,
And I think a lot of people in life think that peace is the absence of discomfort, the absence of conflict, the
mhm,
absence of pain.
yeah.
So I suppose I want to start here, Morgan, just by asking, if peace is a practice, where's the
Mhm.
best place to start?
Mm. Yeah, so I first came to figure out how what peace means to me. I'll start with that. Like, what is
I love it.
peace?
Hmm.
And as a kid, I was really drawn to the song "It Is Well with My Soul," and I took it very literally when the author of the song says, when peace like a river attended my way. And as a kid, that was linked forever, peace as a river. And then just as an artist, I just kept expanding on it. And then if you know anything, the history of that song is All of My Soul.
Yeah.
The author, Horatio Spafford, he wrote that while on the ocean to go meet his wife after he had just lost all of his daughters to sea. And when I think about that, I'm like, the fact that someone in that state of deep grief that I have never known in my own life could somehow see that peace was a river. I was like, that always stuck with me. It just always stuck with me. Like, what is that? I want to know what that is, because that's not a peace that's like, okay, everything in my life is perfect. I've eliminated every problem. We're all good at perfection. I'm living in my cabin away from everybody. Everything's fine. I'm like, that's learning how to breathe, learning how to find grace, how to seek God, how to seek good in the midst of the lowest place of someone's life. So I had this image of peace as a river. I was like, you know what? Rivers often run through the wilderness. They're often in the middle of deserts. I live in the desert, and I actually noticed I think it was like a human-made river, but it was just fascinating to me to see this. It was a river I never noticed before, just kind of running through just like the desert landscape. And even just the fact that my eyes are just naturally drawn to it, to look at that and observe that, I was like, there's something to that. And that's what I hope to explain with the word peace. And then to recognize that's something that we have to practice seeking. In a busy life, in a life that often feels like a wilderness, we may not always be attuned to slow down and listen for the rush of the river that's nearby. We may not always know if we're running by, like, oh, just beyond those trees, if I slow down for a minute, I'll see the water, or I can go and sit and drink water and be replenished or just rest. So it's something we have to practice seeking. And for me, I was just like, yeah, that's what it's been looking like in my life. I've been practicing finding it. I was not too long ago, as an adult, I was diagnosed with autism. And of the many things that diagnosis showed me was that, oh yeah, there's a whole lot of things in my life that make it really hard to stop and hear and see and drink the water of that river. There's so much going on. So I have to recognize that there's grace for that. And that grace is to practice getting back to that place over and over again.
When the diagnosis of autism came, because this is something you had even brought up as I read earlier in life, but when it finally came in your early 30s, what was the collision with the practice of peace? In other words, here's a big torrential storm that just comes and hits you.
Yeah.
What's the next move? What did you do?
Yeah. Honestly, the day I got my diagnosis, I went and sat in the car, the sun was setting, and I just took a really big, deep breath. And in that deep breath, I didn't feel like the world was just ending for me. It didn't feel like, oh, I received this bad news. And, I know everyone receiving diagnosis, that's a big loaded word. So, I'm just talking about my specific experience in that moment.
Sure, Morgan.
In that moment, it was just like, I could see all these years of my life where I had struggled with things that I didn't have a name for. And now in this moment, I was like, I have a name for it. I know what it was. And I know at the same time that that was all a part of getting me here to where I am today. Yes, there was struggle. Yes, there were times where I wanted to give up and I didn't know what to do next. And I also like to share too, it's like, with autism, a lot of people might look at me and say, oh, maybe she has like a little sprinkle of autism. People have all these judges or preconceived notions about like what an autistic person should look like. But I will tell you, I struggled, and I do struggle a lot beyond what someone could easily see. And at the same time, I was like, well, through all of that struggle, what has been consistent? What has been steady in my life? And as I took that deep breath, it was a reminder, wow, I've been breathing through all of this. And this led me on this whole journey. I mean, I still, like, as I'm saying it, I still feel it in my body as I'm saying this.
What do you feel? I'm just curious, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Yeah,
What do you feel?
Yeah, I feel almost like chills, but like a calming chill. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we were talking before this. You said you like cold water. I'm like, I don't know, maybe this is
I love the cold.
Like in cold water. But it's kind of like when you step into, like, you've ever stepped into like the water of a waterfall, or put your feet in, you know, the at the shoreline, at the ocean. It's cold, you know, at first, like, oh, it's cold, but at the same time it's calming. And within that, it's like a reflection for me. It's thinking about, wow, all these moments in my life that I have been through, that my ancestors, all the people who had to exist for me to be here today, yes, all the things that happen so that I can be here. If you include all of this, that's like billions of breaths taken. That's countless numbers of people who have been inhaling and exhaling over and over again. And even just that little fact was so miraculous to me. I'm like, that to me feels like it's on purpose. That doesn't feel like it's an accident. That feels bigger than me. That feels divine. That feels like God is telling me something. There's something to that. And that has been something that I have held on to throughout, from getting my diagnosis until all those moments that I had and still have after, where I've been having to think about the past and also think about what's to come, of like, all this time you have been kept breathing. You have continued to breathe over and over again. Don't take that for granted, Morgan. Do not take that for granted. That is a gift. That's a sign of life. That is a chance to find peace in the present moment. So that has been a real guiding thought through a lot of what I've been going through and thinking about over these past few years.
What does that perspective do for you in your emotional health? Here's what I'm getting at. I think, and this is not to undermine or diminish the significance of present loss, present trauma, a diagnosis.
Yeah.
That someone listening might be experiencing today. But what happens when we are able to pause and get perspective to see the forest for the trees, if you will, right? Like, does it take away the immediacy of the sting for you? It does for me a little bit, because I've walked through some stuff myself. And when I've paused to say, okay, this is not the end. My life is not without the security of a creator who loves me. It doesn't change the fact that I'm going to walk through something challenging, but it takes away the depth of the sting, if you will. Any thoughts on that? Because that's what I heard you say, even in this moment where you said, oh my gosh, I have chills right now. Like, connect that for us.
Yeah. It's, you know, I think that one of the, and, you know, you even pointed out when you said, you know, what does that look like practically? Like, just kind of see the river through the trees. I think images are very valuable and they're very important, because I think that, and I say images, you know, also including just using all of our senses, you know, whether that's, you know, something you can see, taste, smell. I think those help us get out of our head a little bit, even just for a moment. That's why playing the song can loosen your shoulders, which then brings you a sense of joy. You know, it's kind of hard sometimes to just sit down and think your way into joy. You know, it's just like, okay, I'm going to sit here and try to think my way into joy.
Thank you for saying that. If I can
yeah,
interrupt, thank you for saying that, because this is what I really, really have I have severe umbrage against the self-help industry, because this is not about the power of positive thinking. Because if the positive thinking doesn't line up with a belief system inside of our soul, we're spirit, soul, body, what
yeah,
are we doing?
yeah, yeah. If we were just meant to think, then we would just be a brain on a stick, you know.
Let's go.
It's like all of this stuff is intentional, you know,
Mhm.
all of the things that we can feel and sense, and even that when you get to that soul level, you know, a lot of that stuff gets kind of wordless. You know, we run out of words. We don't even know how to articulate it. So it doesn't mean it doesn't matter, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I have found that is you know, a big word that has shown up for me in recent years. I just wasn't familiar with it, but the word embodied, and just kind of like being in your body. I'm somebody who loves to be in my head. So I'm like, be in my body, what? But kind of like I was saying, like, I'm not a brain on a stick. Like all of these things that what I can sense and touch with my fingers and smell with my nose, all of that matters. Like I just to my left here, you know, I have a candle. And when I light that candle, even if it's ever so subtle, it helps me come to the present moment. And I think it's so easy to disregard those things because it's just like, oh, that's just the little stuff. You know, I'm worried about the big stuff.
Mhm.
But it's like, in order to even worry about the big stuff, one, we've got to be rested.
Come on, Morgan.
And wouldn't it be a much better world, like if people handling the big stuff were at peace? Like, wouldn't it be a much better world if more of us making big decisions were breathing deep, reflecting, praying, taking naps before, you know, making these big decisions? So
Wow.
yeah, I believe that those little things matter. And that was one thing, like in the book, I just gave myself permission to just like nerd out about. I was like, look, I'm going to talk about candles in this book. Like I'm going to talk about all these little things because I think that they can help us get to that place of like saying, oh, I'm free to just breathe here. Like I'm free in this
Mhm.
moment. I'm free to just breathe here. So yeah, I
No,
could
that's
talk
really
about that all
good.
day.
I love that, Morgan, because and there's a couple of places I want to take this, but I'll go here first. There's a phrase in your book that, gosh, it hit me between the eyes when I read it. And it
Mm,
was that we should learn how to exhale right in the middle of uncertainty.
mm,
Teach us more.
mm. Oh, yes. So that was really inspired by kind of like, you know, I'm somebody who's always loved history. As a kid, like I just love history. And one of the stories that I share earlier in the book is when me and my family went to Savannah, Georgia, to the first African Baptist church there. And when you go on a tour, they actually show you where holes were drilled in the floor. And that was so runaway slaves who were hiding and awaiting freedom
Wow.
could breathe through those holes. And that's just, you know, again, images, like that image of that has just stayed with me my entire life. And I saw that as a kid.
Wow.
And, you know, when you're a kid, you see things and you can't always fully understand it, but some of those
Mhm.
things, they just stay with you. And this is one of those things that just stayed with me. And as I got older, I just began to think about, I'm like, wow, the fact that someone else said, these slaves awaiting freedom, these people, these humans awaiting freedom, they need to be able to breathe before the freedom, before they're free, while they're still hiding so that they can be free, while they're still in uncertainty. They need to breathe. And for me, what made me so passionate about like not just thinking it and sharing it is like, this is something that we can help other people do.
Hmm.
And that's something that I hope that my art can do. And, you know, there's so many other ways of doing it, but for me, it looks like art and poetry. I'm like, you know what? I have the opportunity to write something that just like somebody was drilling holes in the floor so that runaway slaves could breathe. I can drill holes with poetry so that people can breathe while they're waiting for answers. They're waiting to get to the other side of this really uncertain season in their life. And
I love that.
yeah, I just, that image is so strong. So it's like, and what I love about exhales, the exhales aren't big things. Like there are little things that we have to just keep doing over and over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
It's not like, okay, I took one big exhale, I'm good for the rest of the year. It's like, it's like, no, you have to keep doing this over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's a practice. So yeah, that's what that means for me. And I hope that people feel that permission to kind of say like, yeah, all right, we're going to keep exhaling in this uncertainty. We're going to keep exhaling.
Let's stay there and let's talk to people who are listening right now. It's mid-February in a brand new year, but they're already feeling like behind the 8 ball, so to speak, 2 months into the year. Like, what do you want to say to them?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I want to say that the same place from where you were taking deep breaths at the beginning of this year, at the beginning of last year, and the year before that, you can breathe from that same place right now. So at the beginning of the year, you might be thinking, oh, it's a fresh start. Okay, all right, it's time to get myself together. You can do that today. Every new day, every new breath, even if the first half of this day just totally derailed, went completely against everything you had in mind, it's not too late to start over. It's not too late to say, this right here is a moment to take a deep breath. And if you're having a hard time, you're like, okay, I get that intellectually, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. What I hope you can do is take a look around you. Look to if you live near the water, you have the ideal scenario here, because you can see the ocean waves, how they continue to just push up against the shore over and over and over again. Over and over, it repeats over and over and over and over. If you look at birds, butterflies migrating through the world, they repeat these cycles over and over and over and over again. All around in nature, there are these cycles of growth. There are these cycles of progress. And as long as there's breath in your body, you're a part of that. So take the pressure off yourself. Just take a few deep breaths. You're still a part of something so much bigger than you.
I love that. In fact, I'd love to talk about breath just for a moment with you. You said it,
Yes.
James Nestor. He's the author of Breath, the New Science of Lost Art, which is so cool because I want to have him on the podcast here this year. But I'd love to know, like, what have you learned about proper breathing? Because this is a big deal.
Yes. It is a big deal. And it's one thing that, is discussed in that book. It's just, which is so fascinating. The many things in that book is how we've gotten so far away in a lot of our modern cultures from proper breathing. And that's what stood out to me the most in that book. Was just like, we're kind of in a bad place. It's not something that we think about. It's not something that is a part of our daily routines. Like if you do it, it's just like this other thing. Oh, they're doing their thing over there. I actually remember not too long ago, I was like trying to get better about like taking deep breaths, and someone pointed out to me, why do you take so many deep breaths? And I'm just like, because I have to. We all have to. And that to me was just like, yeah, it's what that did for me from that book was just really show me the urgency in which we need to address this. This isn't like a passive thing, because it affects our health. It affects the way that
100%.
we sleep, the way that we think, the way that we move. If we're not breathing properly, it affects everything. Like whatever you're imagining, yep, that too. It affects so many parts of our lives. So, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but I really like the fact that, wow, this is something that I can work on right now. I can literally work on right now. So that really did give me even more, like just reading that book just gave me even more of a sense of urgency. It's like, this is a topic that needs to be talked about. And again, of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but it's like, we do all have this in common. And this is something that we can spend more time being proactive about.
I just think it's really interesting how when we're under stress, when our soul is just under duress, we take these short shoulder breaths. And we don't take time to breathe in oxygen, to breathe out carbon dioxide. And I mean, this affects our biochemistry.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to take this seriously. I'm such a huge fan of Wim Hof. You know about Wim Hof, Morgan?
I don't.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so
Tell me
that's
more.
where I got my inspiration for cold therapy. Wim Hof is, I believe he's Scandinavian, but I've been following
Mhm.
his work for a couple of years now, and two fundamental pillars of his work involve breath work and cold therapy. And it really
Mm.
it emanated out of his experience of clinical type depression after the suicide of his wife. And he was really able to change a lot of his biochemistry through breathing. In fact,
Mm.
I'd have to look it up, the specifics of it, but I think he went to a university study and he was injected with a toxin. I think it was E. coli. Get this. And through his own regulatory breathing, he was able to isolate the toxin as they injected it, and it had no effect upon his body. I mean, just it's stunning.
Wow, that is
It's stunning.
stunning.
Yeah, Wim
Wow.
Hof, look him up. I mean, his breathing is stunning, and it's circular breathing. So a deep breath in, 30 cycles of that, and then a hold and an exhalation and another hold. And
Mhm.
it changes our biochemistry. There's an adrenaline rush that happens, and it's powerful. I actually do
Wow.
a short exercise before every podcast, so
Wow.
I'm
That is very, yeah.
fresh off the battlefield. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I'm very intrigued by that
Yeah,
because
look
I
him
mean,
up.
I'm
Wim
like,
Hof.
sounds right to me.
Yeah, look him up. It's stunning.
Wow. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
seen people have dramatic improvement through autoimmune diseases, Morgan, through his breath work and through cold therapy. Because I'm actually doing some research right now in cold therapy myself regarding the effects of cold therapy and exposure to cold
Mhm.
upon depression and anxiety and seasonal affective. Because up here in Detroit, from
Mhm.
October to May, the sunlight is just so limited.
Mhm.
And the National Institute of Health just published an article that really demonstrates the effectiveness of cold therapy upon the production of noradrenaline and dopamine. It's
Mhm.
stunning, Morgan. Like
Mhm.
an increase of dopamine of 300%, 400%.
Mhm.
Because you're
Wow. That
exposing your
is,
skin to stressors, and it,
mhm.
it, it catalyzes this dopamine
Yeah.
response in your body.
I
And
mean,
it's
it makes, yeah. That's very fascinating.
yeah.
And it makes sense because, I think a lot about how, just in our modern world, like,
Mm,
we're able to control so much.
mhm.
We're able to control our temperature, we're able to, it's like, oh, it's too cold in here, it's too hot in here.
That's
And it's
exactly right.
like those things seem like small things, but they're not.
Mhm,
And it's changing the way that we, like you said, we're responding to stressors. And
mhm.
sometimes, I wonder if, sometimes our bodies are just like, we don't know what to do. And then it ends up creating all these other scenarios that we don't know what to do with.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm very, very intrigued by that. And I mean, this is slightly different. I feel so funny saying it because I feel like it's one of things where I'm like, well, in my book, but it ended up in the book because I was so intrigued by
Yeah.
it. But I did write about something about how this journalist had taken time to eliminate all artificial light from her house for like a significant period of time. And she just documented everything that had changed within her and around her, even her family, even her kids started wanting more of that to get rid of the artificial light. And they
Yeah.
had everything lit by candles. So what I hope for the future, the near future, and and so we can continue to, kind of zoom out and say, what things have we just kind of accepted and the norm that we need to kind of like go back and probe that a little bit and ask questions about everything from temperature to, body temperature to artificial light. Like there's so many things that I think we're going to look back on and see like, oh wow, okay, the world started moving really fast and we kind of stopped, looking after ourselves in a lot of ways.
It's
So
really good.
yeah, I'm really fascinated by that.
Well, I think one of the distillations of what you just said comes down to this, at least for me. What I heard you say is the world doesn't revolve around us. In other words, things will continue to move on if we say, today, I'm shutting things down. I'm shutting my phone off earlier. I'm taking more
Mhm.
consistent days where the phone just isn't on, or I'm not being
Yeah.
my schedule isn't being dictated by the dings of notifications, or I'm not moving so quickly, just to run a thread through the top of the conversation. I'm not moving so quickly through through my daily rhythms that I'm now unaware of my pace, space within me and without me. And I'm not trying to be woo-woo here. We just have to be aware.
Yeah.
There's a level of embodiment that is necessary for us to recognize, oh gosh, there is a level of languishing I'm feeling today. And I need to have a conversation with myself and with the Lord. Where did this come from? Where did this start?
Yeah.
Hey, soul, why are you cast down? Like, let's just go there, you know? And I think it's so important. So,
oh yeah, I turned for, I want to say, a year now. I have had my notifications for text messages off.
good for you.
And yeah, for a year. And at first I was like, oh, how am I gonna know someone's trying to reach me? Well, guess what? Somebody really needs to reach you, they will call. So I found that I'm like, oh, even those little, like you said, those little dings, like those little things are sowing seeds like throughout the day. And I know like maybe some people don't feel that way, but it's, I'm not saying that's all like this big negative seed, but it's like, no, it's, they're all these little things, like they do add up to the point that, like you said, we might get halfway through the day and like, why do I suddenly feel tense? It's like, well, you've been reading 50 random notifications, everything from international news to your Facebook community group, like all on this one little, screen. So it's like, yeah, that might be why, where a lot of that overwhelm starts to come from. So yeah, I never think it's too much to slow down and ask those questions and say, what is it? What is it that I can readjust? What can I revisit? So yeah.
I mean, teach us how to be present more often then, because I sort of struggle with it in many ways. I'm very strategic. I'm very futuristic in my outlook and in my temperament.
Yeah.
A close friend of mine, her name is Hannah, says, be where your feet are. And I just am so inspired by that.
Yeah.
How do we be more present, Morgan? Because this practice of peace that we're talking about today requires us to be present in the moment, which is really scary for people who are walking through pain right now. They're like, no, I want to escape from this. But I think the healthiest thing would be to sit in it, to face it, and recognize that we're going to be stronger through it. Any thoughts?
Oh yeah. I have a lot of things that I have been practicing. One of them is I try at least once a week to just go outside without my shoes on. Now, here's the thing. Maybe that's something, or some people are like, oh, I do that all the time. My husband's one of those people. He would never wear shoes if he have to. Not me though. I wasn't like that. I heard someone mention it. So I love that quote that you just mentioned that your friend said. And I noticed that I feel different when I go stand outside and I let the wet grass touch the bottom of my feet. I feel different when I have little plants around. And I think all these little individual things, they can help us be more present. And, especially when you think about it from a spiritual perspective, it's like, maybe, just maybe, this is God's way of saying like, hey, I'm here for you. Hey, I love you. Here's something beautiful for you to enjoy. Here's something, this smell of lavender. I made this for you to enjoy so that you can exhale in this moment. I don't know, just maybe. Maybe that's a radical thought, that all these beautiful things that we have in the world were created for a reason. So I like to just give yourself permission to just go on a journey to explore what those little things are. I just mentioned two of them for me, plants, letting your feet touch the ground. Maybe it's a cold shower. Maybe it's opening the windows more often. Maybe it's going on a car ride where you're like, once a week, I'm going on a car ride and I'm not going to play anything. I'm just going to roll the windows down. I'm just going to not play anything. And I think once you start getting in a rhythm of looking for those moments, you're going to start to find more and more and more of them. I'll tell you one that I just did I just did this a few weeks ago, and it's been working for me. So I created in my notes app on my phone. Now I do have like the latest iPhone, so I don't know how this works. So every phone,
Yeah.
I did get the new one, and they have this feature that lets you pin your notes in your notes app with like in like a gallery mode. So it's not like a list. Like, your notes are often on a
Sure.
list. Well, I switched to the gallery mode.
Hmm.
And then at the top of the gallery mode, because I'm an artist, I added pictures and a show in the gallery mode.
Oh,
And I
that's so
have
cool.
favorite quotes, I have affirmations, I have my goals, I
Huh.
have things that when I go scroll on my phone,
Yeah.
I have things that are there that are eye-catching because I have the art there, I have the text, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. And I call it my personal newsfeed. So I created this little personal newsfeed for myself in my notes app. And I find myself, instead of going to go scroll on social media, I've gone here. And yes, I'm still getting on my phone, but I'm often able to go and read the quote and read something and say, okay, that was enough. I'm getting off my phone now. And I've noticed my screen time on the phone
That's awesome.
week after week, it's been going down. Last week, I went down 16% on my screen time from the previous week. And every week that percentage is getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, I am all about finding all those little hacks and little ways to kind of gain that time back in the present moment. It's, I guess it's still using my phone, but it is using it less. And I'm proud of myself for that. So yeah.
Wow. How do you think this interfaces with relationships then, Morgan? Because in what I do, I help people negotiate and navigate through relationship strain. But a common
Yeah.
block to break through is the fear of having the difficult but really necessary conversation. It's the elephant in the room, so to speak. So,
Mhm.
what do you think's behind this hesitancy to pursue truth in the relationship?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of, you have to show more than you tell.
Hmm.
Just last night, I was joking with my husband who was on TikTok and I wasn't. And I was like, oh, you're on TikTok.
Mhm.
And actually I took a picture of him while he was on TikTok, and then I texted him. I was like, I miss you. And I was like kind of joking, but it's like, how many times have we had conversations like that about small
Mhm.
things or big things in relationships? Like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to say anything else, past that. And what I did was I went over to the shelf
Mhm.
and I started reading a book from the shelf. And I was like, would you like to
Wow.
join me? And he was like, you know what? And I was like, here's a book that I got for you last Christmas, not 2 Christmases ago. I don't think either of us have read it. I was like, what if we read this one?
Yeah.
And, we have a toddler, and then he curled up with us too. And, I was like, in that moment, I was really proud of myself, because my normal tendency is to talk about, oh, well, what if we did this? We need to do more of this. And I like, I was like, maybe I should talk less and show more. So it's like, maybe if we're
Okay.
wanting, whether it's in a romantic relationship or friends or community, you're like, I wish we would do more of this. I wish we would, whether it's, be in our phones less, or I wish we would have more deeper conversations.
Mhm.
Maybe instead of saying, I want to have more deeper conversations, initiate a deeper conversation and just see where it goes. And it might be a total flop the first 15 times you try it, but just keep trying if that's something you truly believe. And that's something that someone who loves words, that's hard for me, because I'm like, I got things to say. Like, I do, but it's better to show, and it's better to practice being present yourself, and to let that be not only just like you're just a shining perfect example for everyone, but you become an invitation for someone to breathe deep, instead of it just being, here's the list of everything that I'm doing to be
Man,
productive, to be a better person, da, 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 da. It's like, by you just being present and you just doing it yourself, then you as a person begin to invite other people into that experience.
that was worth the price of admission right there, Morgan. What a
Mm.
what a drop of gold you just gave us, guys. Hit pause, rewind about 60, 75 seconds. Just listen to Morgan's words again. That was so rich. Um, Morgan, this has been such an awesome conversation. And in landing the plane today, I'd love for you to talk to people listening, watching us, who are just overwhelmed and hurting because They've been dealt something they just don't know how to fix.
Mm.
And sitting in the silence of winter just doesn't help the matter either. What would you say?
Mhm. Mm. First thing I would say is that you're not alone
Hmm.
and you are free to feel what you need to feel. And there's no shame in feeling what you're feeling. And if it's hope that you're seeking, if it's healing that you're seeking,
Hmm.
if it's just a text message response that you're seeking, just know that you are free in grace to take your time as you wait for those things, to go through the mountains and the valleys of all the emotions that you're experiencing. You won't be abandoned in any of those places. So just allow yourself to feel that and allow yourself to take deep breaths and know that those little breaths do add up. They feel so small and insignificant sometimes. It's like, I need answers, not a deep breath. Yes, I know. But in the meantime, those deep breaths, they do add up, they do matter, and you matter. So keep taking deep breaths, keep trusting in the process, and you're not alone in this.
I'm just going to take a deep breath right now. My word, Morgan. So rich. Thank you. Thank you for that. And wintoday.tv, folks, /episode 282. Go there right now. Peace is a practice, an invitation to breathe deep and find a new rhythm for life. She is Morgan Harper Nichols. Morgan, what a joy. Thank you for this rich, rich conversation today.
Oh, and thank you as well. I really, truly enjoyed this conversation. I really did.
Thank you, Morgan. I'd love for people to stay connected to your work. How can they do that?
Yeah, I try to make it easy, all the social media links and everything at my website, morganharpernichols.com. And that's where you can find the link to the book, my app, all that good stuff. morganharpernichols.com.
Awesome. We'll do exactly that. Morgan, anything else on your heart that you haven't shared with the listeners today that you'd like to share before we close this out?
Um, as I think about this time of year, I'm born in February, so it's a time where I am definitely just like, oh my gosh, what's happening in my life? I just want to, just further iterate that, yeah, it's kind of an interesting time of year. There's actually been studies done on how this time of year can be a lot for a lot of people to have to deal with, because you're past that new year kind of hype. So when you consider that and everything that's been going on the past couple of years, just let's all just have grace for each other. I think that's something that we can all use more and more of. So here's to a day filled with grace.
It's so good. Morgan, thanks for being here today.